So welcome to the Modernization Committee's first virtual discussion on continuity of committee work and optimizing remote alternatives to in-person meetings. You know, obviously, given the ongoing public health crisis and the uncertainty over when and how the House will reconvene exactly, it seems appropriate and important to talk about how we can continue working as a committee. As all of you know, we're working on a compressed schedule and we've got a lot to do before October 30th, which is when our final report is due. We'll be talking more about our priorities in the coming weeks because I want to make sure that we get to the items in our bucket that the committee members want to see addressed. But today we're going to focus on how we can make productive use of our time while we're scattered all over the country. The bottom line is that no one knows for sure when exactly we'll be able to return to our pre-pandemic Hill routines. That said, my view is the sooner we figure out how to keep working, the better. The good news is that a number of foreign legislatures, as well as state and local legislatures, are already experimenting with virtual platforms. A few congressional committees have also conducted remote meetings and discussions, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about those experiences from the experts joining us today. So let's consider this discussion a test run. I'm sure there will be a few kinks along the way, but that's part of the process and we'll learn from it. This is being recorded, but it isn't live, so no one should panic if they run into technology problems. Before turning it over to Vice Chair Graves, let me just say a few words about how this discussion will run. This isn't a hearing, but we'll use some of the similar procedures just to keep us moving productively. After the Vice Chair finishes his remarks, I'll introduce our two experts and give them 5 minutes each just to share some thoughts and insights. And then we'll move to questions just to accommodate time. Members will have 5 minutes each. I'll call on members in order of seniority, rotating between Democrats and Republicans until everyone has had a chance to speak and ask questions. And since we're holding this discussion to just 1 hour, I'll ask that you limit yourself to just one question or to be as brief as possible. So with that, let me invite Tom to share his thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to see everybody and your smiling faces, and I'm glad everybody's doing so well. And congratulations, Mr. Chairman, on the inaugural first virtual discussion. This is it's going to be fun today. I think this is great. I appreciate that over the last 7 weeks, technology like this has allowed us to keep communicating. I think we've all used it pretty effectively with each other, with our constituents, with our various teams and such, and even our families. I think we've all experienced that. But our work on behalf of the American people cannot, and I think we all know that should not stop as a result of this pandemic. To this committee's credit, Mr. Chairman, and your credit specifically, over the last many months, 14 months, I guess, or so, we have pushed the boundaries and we've gotten a lot of important and critical work done on behalf of the American people and our fellow members that we serve with in Congress. So we cannot allow this new and uncertain situation let that progress grind to a halt. I appreciate that we have two experts joining us today to share some of the best practices that they've witnessed and seen and researched from other legislatures in response to this pandemic as well. I agree that we should be doing what we can to run effectively while we are required to be remote. But from my perspective and our communities, if men and women, much like from our families, just like us, are going to work each and every day, and many, if not most, are, then we should be doing the same. Because I believe, as do I think everybody on this discussion today, Congress, it's essential, very essential. So simply put, there's really no replacement for in-person legislating, and that's why I think today's discussion is a great start on where do we go. As we have these conversations and we produce some new ideas, I don't want this to become a replacement for the type of rules and procedures that this country has been governed by since its creation. It's just too valuable to throw to the wayside, but certainly a valuable conversation during a pandemic like this. So I thank our experts for joining us today, and I'm looking forward to our virtual discussion and learning more about the best practices that have been put in place by legislatures around the world. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yield back.
Thank you, Tom. We're joined today by two experts who have a lot of experience in helping legislatures figure this stuff out. First, we'll hear from Beth Simone Noveck, Ms. Noveck directs New York University's Governance Lab, the GovLab, and its MacArthur Research Network on Opening Governance. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy appointed her as the state's first Chief Innovation Officer in 2018, and German Chancellor Angela Merkel named her to her Digital Council in 2018. Previously, Ms. Noveck served in the White House as the first United States Deputy Chief Technology Officer and Director of the White House Open Government Initiative under President Obama. UK Prime Minister David Cameron appointed her Senior Advisor for Open Government. Ms. Noveck's current work focuses on how legislatures at the international, national, state, and local levels are adapting to keep the lawmaking process going while minimizing the need for face-to-face meetings. And next, we'll hear from Marci Harris. Ms. Harris is the co-founder and CEO of PopVox, a nonpartisan platform that uses technology for civic engagement and governing. Ms. Harris recently organized and implemented 2 mock remote committee briefings. Both briefings featured former reps Brian Baird and Bob Inglis serving as chair and ranking member. The second briefing featured more than 50 former members acting as committee members and briefers, including former General David Petraeus, spokespersons from Zoom and Microsoft, and academics. Ms. Harris has consulted on technology matters with a number of congressional committees. She also testified before the Select Committee last year as a witness in the Improving Constituent Engagement hearing. So with that, Ms. Noveck, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chairperson Kilmer, Vice Chairperson Graves, Ranking Member Graves. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in today's historic conversation. Public health officials, as we know, have warned that the current crisis will continue and that a second round of virus transmission in the fall may be even more disruptive. The ongoing need to prepare for social distancing underscores the importance of ensuring that our legislative institutions are prepared to continue functioning through both the current challenges and those that lie ahead. So, in keeping with Resolution 756, there's an opportunity now to follow the lead of those many legislatures around the world and closer to home who are using technology, who are continuing to legislate, conduct oversight, and even innovate. In New Zealand, for example, it's one of just dozens of legislatures turning to online video conferencing tools such as Zoom and Microsoft Teams, Cisco Web Meetings, and Google Hangouts to do plenary or committee meetings. Committees in New Zealand's parliament, for example, as well as in Argentina, are convening via Zoom. And perhaps you have heard the news that after 800 years in the United Kingdom, lawmakers convened the first ever virtual parliament last week. In this hybrid approach, some MPs were present in the legislative chamber, while most joined remotely via Zoom, as you can see here. Prior to the first remote session, a support team contacted every member of parliament who was expected to speak to ensure that they understood how to use the platform and had all the equipment that they needed to be able to participate. Member of Parliament Shion Wura of Newcastle upon Tyne has commented that showing the people that Parliament is doing what it needs to do, I thought it was an absolute tremendous success. Technology, however, is not just a second best solution in these circumstances. In Ecuador, for example, 129 members out of 137 in their legislature attended a recent virtual session about first responders on April 9th, far more than usually attend in-person hearings. In Chile, members have expressed interest in continued use of technology post-pandemic, given the distances they must travel to their home jurisdictions. The President of the Senate recognizes each speaker for 5 minutes, and the remaining time is shown on the clock, as you can see here, which flashes red when there are 60 seconds remaining. Closer to home in New Jersey, the 120-member legislature uses a dial-in feature, where people dial in on a conference call, debate, and vote on legislation, all done verbally. To join the call, members enter a verification code and their names are checked against a list of members. During the first remote session on March 25th, the state's General Assembly used the remote system to pass 5 bills related to pandemic response. Many legislatures are also facilitating remote voting. In Spain, for example, MPs have been casting votes using the Congress's intranet since 2012 to accommodate those on maternity leave or disability leave. Rather than voting in real time, however, voting is typically open for a 2-hour period before and after the meeting. In Brazil, the Congresso Nacional de Brazil has passed a new resolution which enables its 594 members of both chambers to work remotely. All participation in the Senate is now virtual. and senators can vote remotely, either by voice or using an app. Senators log in with a secure password and a PIN and also have to authenticate their vote using their picture and a further authentication code that's sent via text or via WhatsApp. The pandemic, however, is also creating an opportunity for Congress to increase opportunities for public engagement, using new technologies to improve the quality of lawmaking, a practice that we at the GovLab call crowd law. This April in France, for example, 65 members of parliament across all political parties sponsored an online public engagement called The Day After to invite the public to offer solutions to 11 challenges posed by recovery from the pandemic. Committees of the UK Parliament have for many years now frequently met online with public experts, asking experts to review and comment on the evidentiary basis for a public policy as part of a process they call evidence checks. In Taiwan, 200,000 people have participated in the V-Taiwan open policy making process. The Taiwanese have used this process to formulate 26 pieces of national legislation on such issues as regulating Uber, telemedicine, and online alcohol sales. Here in the United States, the Federation of American Scientists Congressional Science Policy Initiative organizes a network of over 600 scientists, engineers, and technologists to engage with Congress and provide succinct analysis and help committee staff draft questions. From February to mid-March of this year, over 4,000 workers helped the state of New Jersey's Future of Work Task Force, which I lead, to prioritize among problems relating to technology and worker rights, worker benefits, and lifelong learning, using a free and easy-to-use tool known as a wiki survey developed by Princeton University that has been used in over 17,000 online citizen consultations in different countries. At the end of the consultation, the state received a rank-ordered list of problems automatically presented by the software, which offers multiple visualizations of the results, including the ordered list of responses, data on when people participated, and how many. In conclusion, legislatures are using technology, using IT, not only to survive this crisis, but to thrive. The crisis is creating the impetus to use new tools that have been long available to us to improve the deliberative quality of the legislative process today, and I think more importantly, to innovate tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Harris, let me recognize you for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. And I'm actually going to use the ability to share a screen while we're here and share a few slides. Can you see it okay? Great. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman Graves, and honorable members of this select committee for this opportunity to address you again. Late last year, two colleagues and I sent you a memo in which we wrote a number of scenarios might imperil the ability of Congress to physically convene, but need not bring the legislative branch to a standstill. Technology provides ample opportunity for secure, authenticated communication and legislative activity that would allow the first branch to continue to function even in an emergency that limits physical movement. We made those recommendations as the House was considering whether this committee should be continued and, if reauthorized, what big issues it might consider in its second year. I had hoped we would be having a conversation about this topic, but certainly not under these circumstances. Now, I am predisposed to thinking about disaster planning since my first public service was when my hometown in Tennessee, Jackson, got hit by a tornado and I was put in charge of the recovery. And I've been thinking a lot about the lessons of that time over the past few weeks. As like in any disaster, you first prioritize health and safety and recovery, but then comes a long period of keeping the lights on and just trying to put one foot in front of the other as life is nothing like normal. That's the blue tarp stage, and I think we're beginning to enter that, and Congress has to think about how it will operate during this stage over the next few months. My colleagues and I have spent the past several months talking regularly with staff to understand the needs and concerns. We've attempted to respond with advice, with information, with technology. And in the case of remote proceedings, we decided that one of the most valuable resources we could provide was an example. I know from lots of experience that you cannot try technology the first time around and expect it to work exactly as you wanted it to. And we felt that congressional staff and members were a little too busy during this time to be doing their own beta testing. So our solution was a mock remote hearing and markup so that current members and staffers wouldn't be the ones trying it first. Predictably, we hit upon some of the same issues that you are having probably around the country. Somebody's mic wasn't on, somebody's video wouldn't start, there was background noise, etc. We also found some issues that were very unique to Congress, such as the need for members and staff to have a secure back channel, or important questions, especially for a markup, about how a chair should engage with the parliamentarian or how a clerk should call the roll, and a wish list of features such as a visible countdown clock, which this committee is actually handling very well. But the main finding from those two mock hearings was, as you're just demonstrating today, that remote proceedings are not a question of technology, but of culture, process, and will. For our second mock hearing on April 16th, again, as mentioned, former reps Brian Baird and Bob Inglis were our chairs, and they extended the invitation to the former members of Congress Association. We thought we'd get about 8 to 10 people sign up to join us. We got over 70. Our witnesses ranged from retired General David Petraeus, who recounted how the military uses video conference technology in theater, to the shadow minister of the UK, Chian Woora, who was quoted earlier, who noted that representatives should show themselves to be as adaptable as their constituents, like the grandparents around the UK who were learning to use video conferencing to connect with their grandchildren. As mentioned, we had representatives from Microsoft and Zoom, and experts like the wonderful Beth Noveck joining us. At the end of the proceeding, we asked the former members what they thought about it and what advice they would share with you, with today's Congress. And if we've got some time later, I am happy to jump into the words of wisdom they have to share. I want to close by acknowledging that this committee has provided an important forum for ideas like the ones that we shared at the end of last year to address the long-term needs of a 21st century Congress. If we had been a few years earlier with that memo and with the conversation about the continuity of Congress among this group, Congress might have been better prepared for the challenges of today. This goes beyond the current crisis, beyond this blue tarp moment. When I was working with colleagues from the American Political Science Association last year to make recommendations for this committee, we initially had trouble landing on a good definition of the term modern. And we ended up concluding that modern was not a destination to be reached or a box to check. It was instead, a modern Congress was one that could anticipate changing conditions while maintaining or even improving its effectiveness. This is a moment to show that the House is up to that challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both for your testimony. We're going to dive into questions. I'll take the first crack and then invite Vice Chair Graves as well. Let me just start with a question for either of you. You know, we're talking about committee continuity now because of the coronavirus, but I'm interested in your thoughts on how committees can use remote participation systems in other scenarios that might require quick action. So say, for example, Congress is in the middle of the August district work period, and we suddenly have a crisis on our hands, a natural disaster or a major food chain disruption or energy shortage, or just something bad happens. I guess my questions are, one, how can committees harness these technologies in a way that will allow them to fulfill their Article 1 obligations, even when committee members are scattered all over the country? And at the same time, and I think this is a concern that you've heard raised, how do we safeguard against turning this remote committee work into a new norm that keeps us from doing our jobs in person?
Well, I'm happy to jump in and just offer that one of the responses that we received from the former members actually was that one of the benefits they saw with the remote proceeding was the ability to hear from witnesses at a distance. So from the UK parliamentarians, for example, or the representatives from Spain. And certainly in a crisis like this or other kind of crises that you could meet, the ability to hear from people on the ground, frontline healthcare workers, emergency responders, and the people who are actually seeing what's happening on the ground would be tremendously useful, I think, for committees at any time.
I'll just add to that, if that's okay, that I think we've seen with some legislatures like Spain or Brazil, they have put in place the infrastructure and the means to be able to respond to crises many years ago, and that's really helped them. You know, Spain anticipated this, not a crisis, but simply the fact that they have members who may go on maternity leave or may go on disability leave or may have need to participate remotely. Brazil created a small, what they affectionately nicknamed their hacker lab, to be able to stand up some tools so that they would be able to respond to challenges like that. And I think, just to add to Marci's point, is that this crisis, like others that will come, also precipitate the need not just for members to be able to talk to one another and deliberate and convene, but also to engage with the public. That's where what we're seeing a lot now is we're about, for example, in New Jersey, to roll out our next wave of expansion of testing strategy, contact tracing strategy. One of the core things we're doing is standing up citizen engagement mechanisms online that will respect social distancing, but allow us to hear from people about what's going on the front lines in terms of the way they're being protected in their workplaces, about the concerns that they have about introduction of all of these new tools and a range of other issues. So I think the opportunity to actually innovate in public engagement is also really important, and one that technology is rightly suited for.
Thanks, Ms. Harris. I'd love for you to talk about some of the feedback you got from former members who participated in the mock hearing. You know, what did you hear? What were the main takeaways? Oops, I think you have to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you.
So we invited them to fill out a survey at the end and asked them what was beneficial. And as I mentioned, the ability to hear from distant witnesses topped the list. Also, former Rep. Mary Bono said that she felt that members were a bit more real. I don't know if you're experiencing that right now, but they were actually connecting with each other in a little bit more of an informal way, whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing. We asked what the concerns were, and I think the concerns that Mr. Graves raised were also experienced by the former members. They don't want to see anything replace the in-person relationships and the opportunity to build trust among members that comes with being together in person. When we asked what advice they would provide to the current members, we got a lot of just do it's. I appreciated Mr. Etheridge, who said, check it out, it's better than conference calls. And former Rep. Payne, who said it's not just about the technology, it's about behavior, and that members should become familiar with these tools and use them during the pandemic. Former Rep. Halverson said, don't be afraid of it. Representative Sheila Fromm said that it's a way for Congress to be seen as engaged during this time and informed and effective. And former Rep. Schneider from Rhode Island said, not to replace in-person exchanges, but a way to help in these exigent circumstances. So we asked, after all, whether members think that the current Congress should conduct remote hearings during this time, during the outbreak, temporarily. And we had 13 said yes, 4 said maybe, and none said no. So it was a pretty good average there.
Super. Thanks. Mr. Graves.
Thank you, Chairman, and thanks to both of you for your presentation. Now, this is really fascinating to me because I have, over the last 6-7 weeks, I think all of us, all the members here, have experienced probably better contact and information from the administration and from our own caucuses and from the committees, quite frankly, than I've experienced in the last 10 years. And it's because of technology, whether it's conference calls or whether it's video conferencing. There just seems to be an easier ability to connect and get information. That being said, at the same time, this committee just a year ago recommended one of the I guess series of recommendations was to connect members in a personal way. That would create more bipartisanship and more collaboration, was to reunite members, to have more time together, whether it be in space around the Capitol, around the House floor, or more time together, putting our schedule in a way that where we maybe stayed over the weekends, we got to know each other better. So it's like two conflicting concepts here that really fascinate me. And so I definitely see the benefits of it. It's made it easier for everybody and certainly more flexible, and we've received more information. I'd be curious about the pros and cons, though, of transparency. Does it still allow for that transparency, for constituent engagement, or ability to watch and observe? Will it still allow for genuine debate? You know, how do you pick up on the nuances in a committee meeting with other members and with a hearing witness that maybe you wouldn't pick up on otherwise? And then if it is good for now, I guess I ask myself the question, why wouldn't it be good for not now, for after that? If it works now so well and members love it so much, as the quote you've said, why wouldn't we continue it in the future? So a couple of different thoughts there, but Ms. Harris, start with you if you don't mind, if you have anything you could opine on that.
Well, thank you so much. And I actually think that this really plays into the recommendations that this committee made to allow offices to experiment and conduct pilots with technology. So I think a lot of your questions, really the answer is we don't yet know. But by the committees being able to try this and conduct remote proceedings and other virtual actions, it's an opportunity to find out if something is lost, if something is gained, if perhaps there's a magic combination of more codels and more virtual proceedings that kind of, you know, gets you spending lots of time together, but also spending more time with your family. But I think what is really heartening right now is the fact that Congress is willing to try, and that's a really big deal. As you know, that was one of the it was quite an earth-moving suggestion to allow that flexibility. So I think there's a lot to be learned, and we just don't know until Congress tries.
So thanks for those are really good questions. And I think Mr. Cameron also really asked this question about how do we create the balance between the benefits of in-person and offline. And I think we're all seeing, I don't know about you, but I have 5 happy hours tonight. I have to choose among them: classmate reunions, political meeting, you know, fundraiser. My team is having a happy hour. I have too many social engagements, far more than I would normally have. So there is this way that the online, I think in ways we haven't expected, is creating more intimacy. But you know, what we've heard from a lot of places, and you know, Chi-Onwurah, the MP from the UK, specifically said when we talked to her, this is just not suited to every type of debate. And it's not going to be a replacement for in-person debates. What you're seeing with a lot of legislatures, for example, is that they're creating this hybrid circumstance where some people are in the room and some people are online as a kind of experiment. And I think what we're probably going to see going forward is, first of all, to your earlier point about transparency, all of this could be streamed if we wanted it to be. This is private, but this could easily be streamed via multiple channels to actually create more transparency and more engagement with the work of Congress. But I think we'll have to experiment with different kinds of rules where, you know, you just have to show up in person a certain number of times, and you can't do everything online. Some meetings could be online, others could be not, could promote more opportunities to convene and work together. So to Marci's point, I think experimentation is really what's called for, and some rules that ensure that this doesn't become the exclusive way of doing business, although it surely is actually creating more opportunity rather than less for engaging with one another and with the public.
One final thought on that. Those are great points, Ms. Noveck. On the examples you cited, did you notice that there was more collaboration or more bipartisanship, so to speak, in the different legislatures or parties or bodies around the world?
Well, what we're seeing is that people are showing up more. So the attendance is actually better when you don't have to travel. I think we're all seeing that. I mean, the classmates I'm meeting tonight, I haven't seen them since, you know, 5 years ago at our last reunion, and suddenly we're all meeting, and the same is true for work. People are just getting together more in new ways. So I do think that that's fostering more conversation, and it's not a matter of people only, I mean, parties are and caucuses are having meetings of their own. But when it comes to committees or even plenary sessions, what we're seeing and hearing from everybody is attendance is off the charts, maybe because they're excited about these experiments, but also it just is so much more convenient for people. So anecdotally, the answer is yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Ms. Chairman.